Hello and welcome to Noble, a platform that connects people through stories. We continuously say thank you for allowing us to come to your space on the regular to share a number of stories that connect us. Today I want to share a story that brought a lot of division in opinion some years back. There was a time that we felt as a nation that there were increase in rape cases. And therefore, I shared a story after I learned that a number of men did not understand what is defined as rape. And the issue of consent is a whole different debate that needs to have both gender on the table so that we talk about it and know there is something called consent, and we also have what is called informed consent. And what defines sex that is not rape is the informed consent, where age or the mental state defines the consent. And so when I shared this story, I got a lot of backlash from men, and there were a number of issues coming up that women were responsible for their rape. There was that bit of victimization. And so I've worked with a number of organizations in Siaya County, and I've counseled girls that have been raped without even knowing that whatever happened was rape. Their stories of how they got pregnant, their stories of why they're traumatized, emanated from an incident that was rape. And so I have this story of a girl, 19 years of age. She was dating a guy who was living with his friends. You call them roommates. It's something common in college. So she was very used to the friends, the boyfriend's friends. And so there's this one evening after the boyfriend had moved to a place where, to his own space, but not so far away from where they were living initially with his friends. So this girl goes looking for the boyfriend because they had like a disagreement, and so they want to solve issues. So the guy was not picking the calls and everything. And so she goes to look for him and didn't find him. So he decided to go and, ask if the friends knew his whereabouts. And she learned that he had traveled. And so they sit there and they talk to the girl, and they tell the girl to, help them prepare food. And because these are people, these are friends that they have played PS together, they've gone out together, it's like a family. And so she agrees to cook for them. And in the process, things run so well, they are telling stories here and there, the two friends. And eventually one of them left because she came to learn that they had moved. I mean, everyone had actually moved to their own space. So not so far away from each other, but just within the same space. So how things turned to the point where the guy in whose house she was cooking wanted to have sex with her. It's also amazing because this was like the friend's girlfriend, but these things happen, So the guy apparently forced this girl to have sex with him. And it was violent. It went violent, and he actually forced himself to her. And so the resentment of men grew into this girl. she started like hating men. She started, telling her story from a point of depression. She was wounded, and the wound came from the fact that when later she tried to explain these incidents to her boyfriend, it turned out the guy did not understand her. The guy felt, just like many others, that she took herself there, that she put herself in a very vulnerable space, and so what the world was speaking to her was the fact that she placed herself for whatever happened to her. And so the time I met her, she was only telling me one thing, that she hates men. And to overcome or to let go of whatever was happening to her, the trauma, she could only kill this trauma through drinking, through smoking. And it got to a point that her sister got so worried, and she was not talking about this story anymore. She had her own wounds. And so a moment happened that she was with a friend of hers. Of course, this is after she was done with campus. She was into drama, music and drama, theater. And so she would go to one of the, spaces in Nairobi to rehearse and perform and all that. So one evening they traveled home with her friend, and in the matatu, of course, you know how it is in Nairobi. Sometimes late in the night, the vehicles are so packed. Maybe people are, you will have to stand along the way, because there's no seat. So she was among the people who were standing in the matatu, and then a guy, I think the conductor, the tout, inappropriately touched her. And this triggered, the past incident with men. And she pounced on this guy, and she was screaming. And everything became so violent. Even her friend could not reach her because all she wanted was to kill this guy. He is a man, and he's done that thing again to her. The trauma was back. Like any sort of violence, anything that violates her sexually was the trigger, would bring the trigger back to her mind. And so she started screaming that they stopped the bus. And her reason was she just wanted to get out of that bus. And because the bus could not stop, she lost it. And she went to the door and threw herself. Thankfully, she did not die, but she had a brain damage, and she was hurt, she was broken, and she could not walk. So for so many years, she sat there, mute, on her wheelchair, never to tell her story. But her friend Ashley has been there telling these stories many times. And so when I saw that men were justifying some of the incidences, it dawned to me that we need to start having conversations around sex, conversations around what defines consent. Because you still have people who believe that a no from a woman is not entirely a no, does not mean no. And therefore, it doesn't stop you from whatever you try, or whatever you're trying to do. And these conversations, most of the time, really is a reflection of what the society believes out there. And therefore, we've had so many silent voices of rape victims that don't share their stories, because sometimes the rape happens when they went visiting, and they are told that you visiting was, you putting yourself are vulnerable, or you prompted the guy to rape you and everything. And therefore I felt I needed to share this story to ask ourselves, have we had enough conversation around rape, around consent? Because the belief is that a no is not a no from a woman, and rape cannot happen in a room where a woman took herself. So just to debunk these things, I wanted to share the story of the girl, 19, mute on her wheelchair, all from an incident that rose from the trigger brought by an inappropriate touch that took her back to the memory when she was raped. That was the Noble story.